Basically, convert this space to an office, then we're changing the use, and then we have to break it up.
We're going live, guys.
Yep. Are we good, Kim? We good? Okay. Welcome to Planning Commission. It's pretty bare tonight. Yeah. I imagine comments might be a little short. But we'll go ahead and get started. I'll be giving the Pledge of Allegiance, and then we'll go from there. All rise, please.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Yeah, it's a good question. I haven't heard from Commissioner McFadden. Did he reach out? Okay. Yeah, thank you. We'll have to follow up with Commissioner McFadden to see where he was. All right, next we'll open up for public comment. And just a reminder, if you can keep your comments to 3 minutes or less, and then make sure you state your name and address, and then direct your comments to the full commission. That'd be great.
You make public comments during public hearing.
Can I get a motion to pull the, do I need a motion? Okay. All right, we're moving on now. Thank you. I'll get this eventually.
You didn't have before.
Hey, I know, I'm getting there. I'm getting there. All right, then I'll move to item number 3, approval of consent agenda. I'll open up for any comments from the commissioners. Commissioner Woolsey.
The only thing I thought was that it was missing in the notes, just the reference to the discussion where we were talking about the incentives, the TIF or the TTIF, I had to look that up, and just the impact of obviously not selecting an option, just because I felt it was pertinent to the discussion to understand the reasons why we need to move forward with at least presenting and selecting options. So that was my only thing that I felt was kind of missing from the notes. And it kind of the different styles that we did discuss about the discussions and whatnot. So I don't know if that can be updated or at least referenced. That was it. Otherwise, everything else looked fine.
Are there any concerns with staff on that?
You just need to be more specific on
Yeah, I guess just to amend the minutes to include the discussion that took place over the reasons why, because there was discussion about not making any selections and what would happen. And obviously it's a state, requirement. We're trying to be good. What was the word? Not stewards, but cities, not underlings, all subdivisions of the state. We're trying to be good, but just what happens if we don't? And again, I think it was stated specifically that the TIF or the TTIF, which even though it's not something that we're actively pursuing, it might become something in the future. And so I just kind of felt like that was something in the meeting minutes that needed to be there, because not everybody's going to go back and listen to the audio and the video of the meeting.
What did you want to specifically say about the TTIF?
That was one of the incentives that the state was putting out there for the 5 options instead of just going with the 3. Because right, if we just go with the 3, it doesn't matter either way. But if we select 5, we then open up the doorway for those funds to be available.
And what is the TTIF?
TTIF.
Transportation tax.
What does the F stand for?
Fund or funding, I'm not quite sure off the top of my head.
And that was all.
Okay, are we good, Steph? Okay, Commissioner Bolton? Commissioner Bollray? I didn't have anything else to add, so I'll look for a motion to approve with the adjustment that Commissioner Losi pointed out.
I move that we approve the consent items as amended by Commissioner Losi.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay. Moving on, item number 4, public hearing and action on Res 22-44 moderate income housing update. What I'd like to do is get staff to review it, and then we'll open it up for public comments after staff review.
Thank you, Chair. We discussed this in last month's meeting, so I'm not going to go into length of it again. However, what's included in the packet is the items that were selected last time. Now, Commissioner Losi did point out to me there was 2 items that were not specifically identified. As I reviewed my notes from when I put the packet together, the reason why, so the items that weren't specifically identified by the Planning Commission were item E and item X. The reason why those are included in the packet are twofold. One is that as we consider the options that we're selecting tonight for recommendation, and I just want to remind, we just have to select 3. We don't have to select the entire list of items. Although if you want to, you can, but we only have to select 3. As I was beginning to review the items that were selected, there was a concern that in the state provision, if items are substantially similar, they can only be counted as 1 item. So if we're selecting 3 rezone options, then those are all substantially similar to rezoning, and so they count as 1 option. And so what I wanted to provide are other alternatives that were discussed in the meeting and had interest in a conversation, and also didn't necessarily go outside of the realm of what those were the spirit of the other ones, just as an option as I reviewed the audio from last meeting. So real quick, the options before you, and you can always choose any other option that is on the master list, are strategy A, rezone for densities necessary to facilitate the production of moderate income housing. Strategy B, demonstrate investment in the rehabilitation or expansion of infrastructure that facilitates the construction of moderate income housing. E, create or allow for and reduce regulations to internal or detached accessory dwelling units in residential zones. F, zone or rezone for higher density or moderate income residential development in commercial or mixed use zones near major transit investment corridors, commercial centers, or employment centers. X, demonstrate implementation of any other program or strategy to address the housing needs of residents in the municipality who earn less than 80% of the area median income, including the dedication of a local funding source to moderate income housing, or the adoption of a land use ordinance that requires 10% or more of a new residential development in a residential zone be dedicated to moderate income housing. Or W, create or allow for and reduce regulations to multifamily residential dwellings compatible in scale and form with detached single-family residential dwellings and located in walkable communities with residential or mixed-use zones. So that's all I have as an introduction for you tonight, and open to any questions after the public hearing.
Okay, thank you, Trevor. I'll look for a motion to open up public hearing officially.
I'll make a motion to open the public hearing on action RES 22-44 moderate income housing update.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 All right, it is now open for public hearing.
Public comment.
Comment, yes. Thank you.
It's
The
public
public
hearing.
hearing. Public hearing.
Public hearing comment.
Paul Sturm, 2527 Deer Run Drive. My comments tonight have to do with this public hearing and action on RES 22-44, modern income housing update. These comments that I've written here were written just in the last couple of days, and some of these opinions in here may be changed due to what Trevor had said. But number A, please see packet page 9 of 11, third paragraph. The options that are available are found within the PowerPoint in this packet. There is no PowerPoint slides presentation in this packet. It was not included. B, please see packet page 9 of 11, fourth paragraph. And this is after discussion with the Planning Commission. The commission wanted to consider the following items with the attached potential implementation plans for each item. The Planning Commission, during their meeting on 14 July 22, wanted to consider only 4 options, not the 6 being presented in the staff report. The Planning Commission already made their decision. Please see the following excerpt from this package, which is in the meeting minutes on page 5 of 11, near the bottom of the page, from the minutes of the 14 July 22 Planning Commission meeting to show what was said. The Planning Commission came to a consensus on strategy options A, B, F, and W. And just a reminder, the minutes have already been approved during this meeting. The question I have, why does staff in their staff report not respect the consensus/vote by the Planning Commission regarding the strategy options selected? And some of these were addressed in Trevor's opening. Number C, please see packet pages 9 to 11 of 11. The implementation plans shown in this packet are well presented so as to provide South Weaver City with a path forward. The concern that I still have is the inclusion of strategy options E and X in this presentation, since strategy options E and X were not selected by the Planning Commission during the 14 July 22 meeting. My question at this time was, who on staff added strategy options E and X into this discussion after a clear consensus decision and vote by the Planning Commission to their desired strategy options? Thank you.
Any other comments? Okay, I'll look for action to close public hearing.
I move that we close the public hearing.
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Okay, we'll open up for commissioner comments. Commissioner Boatright, anything to add?
Just to address Paul's concerns, I'm not as concerned as he is about the inclusion. I actually like the review of it. So last time it was just consensus. It wasn't a decision or an action item. So I'm actually interested to hear what everybody else has to say.
Thank you. Commissioner Walton?
So I guess going back to a comment that you made about not selecting similar options, the way I look at what we've got in front of us is they're all pretty similar because they all have to do with code. I mean, where's our threshold for deciding how close or how similar can they really be?
So as I was reviewing the code, and granted, I will admit the descriptions from the state are very vague on what they exactly mean, right? So
As far as what constitutes a similarity?
right. So well, no, on what each item means. So like if you take for example, option W, create or allow for and reduce regulations related to multifamily residential dwellings compatible in scale and form with a detached single-family residential dwelling. As I reviewed all of the documents from the state, they did not expound on exactly what all of those words mean, right? So is that the form of the building? Is that form of the how the code is written? Is that reducing regulation? So there's some leeway there. As in my professional opinion, and you can decide however you want to recommend this to the city council, that anything that involves identifying land for rezone, whether that's identifying land for rezone and transit corridors or identifying land in general for rezone, that those would be a very similar activity. One's just more specific to the type of area that you're looking at rezoning, if that makes sense. And so another example was internal and external accessory dwelling units was option E, right? There was also a different option that was reducing or eliminating impact fees for external accessory dwelling units. Those, because they involve regulations for internal and external accessory dwelling units, those would be very similar activities, and so would constitute similar items in my opinion. But there's not a lot of direction from the state, but I just wanted to make sure that we had various options out there for us to discuss and make sure that we make an informed decision. So yeah, so in my opinion, if it's dealing with code updates to amend zoning regulations like option X or W, those would be similar, right? Because you're reducing regulations for or requiring regulations for moderate income housing. So they would be similar activities. Although you could argue that they are different because they're different areas of code. So however you would want to recommend that.
If I may just real quick, Mr. Watson. So if I'm hearing you correctly, what you're trying to do is to prevent us from pinholing ourselves into something and then just having to go back and select something at a later date because the state rejects our.
Correct.
our
When we
selection.
submit that, I want to reduce the chances of them sending it back and saying, upon review, these items are similar in scope, and so you would need to redo this process to select items. So that's my opinion. We can make any case that we want to the state, though. I'm perfectly comfortable in doing that. I just wanted to make sure that we had a good representation of options so that we could make an informed decision there.
Gotcha.
It just feels like a near impossibility to figure out what the state might consider comparable options, right? So I just don't know how to factor that into any recommendation. I'd rather go into or provide a recommendation to the city council that provides multiple options and not just 3 or 4. I'd like to get to 5. Leave them the option to go for that whole option with TTIF funding. So that's my initial reaction to the update, but I have other. Absolutely.
So does the staff have a recommendation based on what you've read and studied?
So what I would recommend are things like X and W would be very similar because we would be looking at residential zones and making adjustments to the code based on all the residential zones, right? So those would be similar activities. Then also option A and option F, looking at rezone opportunities would be substantially similar there. B is completely all on its own, and E is all on its own as well. So I feel like that would be my recommendation, is if you went with option A or F, that you would choose one or the other, because one is larger in scope and encompasses the entire, it's very broad. So we could look at any areas of rezone versus F, where it's specific targeted areas.
Can you remind me why F with the zone or a rezone for a higher density or a moderate income residential development in a commercial or mixed use zone near major transit investment corridors, commercial centers, or employment centers fit? Because it would seem to me like we don't want to rezone for higher density. We already know what our max density is, and do we really have those commercial centers, employment centers, or major transit corridors? Like, I'm just trying, is F really viable for our city?
Yeah, that is an excellent question. So that was one of the options that we had selected on the last one. But considering recent conversations with City Council on the rezone request above the car wash,
Mhm.
right? Where they wanted to rezone commercial to
To
residential,
residential.
and there was not an appetite for that.
Yep.
I would lean towards that there's probably not an appetite to execute F.
Okay.
However, on A, I feel like that could be a better possibility. And I want to remind, moderate income housing does not necessarily require multifamily, although it can, and in many cases would. However, there's a lot of different ways that we could put moderate. There's a concept called missing middle housing. I have the book in my office. If you ever want to read it, it's pretty fascinating. But I honestly think so, but I'm a nerd, I guess. When we look at housing, often our minds think of three things, right? We think of our single family options. We think of our high dense multifamily apartment options. And then the only middle housing that we ever think of is townhome as a middle housing, right? Those are the typical mindset because those are the typical developments that we see around. However, in that middle housing, there's a wide variety of different housing types.
Okay.
There's stacked single family condo units. There's smaller cottage court, which is like 1,000 to 1,200 square foot single family home located on properties. I've seen cottage court be upwards of 20 units an acre, all with a single family option, right? And so looking at areas where we could maybe incorporate single family growth, but have a smaller footprint, which then would allow for more moderate affordable housing. I want to be very clear that it's not low income or affordable.
Well, and if A and F are similar enough with both being rezoned, we're still presenting them as a possible option. We don't
Mhm.
really know the viability yet, and we won't know until it gets selected and possible implementation plans determined. So I'm fine moving forward with kind of those ones.
I was under the impression that we were honing in on F before because we felt like the actual area where that would even play a part is so small in our community already that was kind of our way to try to limit the impact, right?
Mhm.
Did you do any more research to see if that's going to come back and bite us if we try to take that approach?
No, that wouldn't necessarily so another really important thing in this is the implementation plan. So this is a heavy portion of what the update was. Is previously we just had to say, here's some strategies that we picked, and we never really had to report on what we did
We picked
with
them.
them, right? We picked them. The state's now saying, well, now every year you have to tell us how you're doing and what you're doing, and if you're following your implementation plan. So what I've done, and this isn't to skirt any rules, I think it's a really responsible way to do it, is by taking our time to study the areas that we would want to even possibly rezone, study the potential uses of those areas, the potential housing options that we would want to incentivize for those zones. And incentivize, I mean like provide density for in those zones. So providing density for a single family option in a smaller unit size and identifying where in the city would that make the most sense, taking the time to study those out over the next few years, and then incorporating it into the general plan process. And I know some of us may not be ready to start talking about this, but our general plan is now 3.5 years old. And it's every 5 years that they recommend reviewing it.
Man, not man.
No, it's not mandated, right? I think a large portion of the city still has some major PTSD about.
Yes, I understand, and I get secondhand PTSD from it. But it is something to consider in these conversations. If you start studying these areas, then we can use that to inform the general plan process on any small areas that would need to be updated. But that's just a possible implementation plan. If things change over time, then we can submit something saying our implementation plans changed because this just isn't feasible anymore.
So actually I have a question on that. What's the likelihood, given that we already went through this exercise last year with SB 34, and now all of a sudden we get the new and improved HB, whatever the number is. Are we gonna be doing this again? And are we gonna have more options and more regulations? And
I think we should
Probably.
expect that.
I would say, and I think this is just not a word of warning
Caution.
or caution, but just in my opinion, if the state sees a lack of effort towards it, then they will want to review it again, right? And tighten the screws a little bit. So what I think in the implementation plan, when you read through those, I don't think that they're very scary when you boil it down to it, right? A lot of it is, let's take our time, let's study it out, let's look at the impacts, let's identify the areas, because there are some things that we could do. And as long as I feel, as long as we as a city are honestly trying to put forth some effort, not to include 70 units an acre in our city, but to say what is actually feasible, what will work, what will achieve the goals of the city, and maybe scratch some of the needs on the housing issue in Utah, then I feel like that the state would be a little less prone to say, okay, we've got to dial this in because everybody sent us crap plans.
Yep.
So
I just have two comments, and one is, has staff, I guess not we, but conversations with other cities that are similar in size and scope to what we have here in South Weber, to kind of see which option they've been leaning towards.
I haven't spoken with cities of similar size, but I have spoken with a number of different planning individuals. Some of them can transfer their same plans continually because they have options that transfer over. And so lucky them. For the most part, a lot of them are taking the attitude of, okay, we'll select option and implementation plans, our studies, and further look into how can we investigate this option, which I feel is a reasonable expectation to tell the state of, okay, we will look into it and we'll see how we can get that
See how
done.
it fits in with our city. The other one was just item D, where it was the identify and utilize the county general fund subsidies or other sources of revenue to waive construction-related fees that are otherwise generally imposed by the county municipality for the construction or rehabilitation of moderate income housing. Is that one that's viable for South Weber? Like, are there fees that we could potentially look into and funding that we could potentially source to help? And again, we're trying to show good faith effort to do what we're being asked to do. Is that an option?
Yeah, so when we're looking at the options, and I had to look specifically at that one, so I'll have to jump back to the last meeting, but there are options that the counties also have to do this too, right? And so that could be geared towards the county itself. And so if you substitute the word county with city in that, then it's city funds to provide that. Now, the only county funds that I'm aware of that would be able to be used is CDBG, that's Community Development Block Grant funding. The unfortunate side of that is, as South Weber City is concerned, we do not qualify for Community Development Block Grant funding in the city because our median income is too high for that program. So we would need to be 60 to 80% of the county median income. And right now we are 110% of the county median income. So we do not qualify for that.
Okay.
I'd have to look into that.
No, I know we did, because I was on Zoom.
Well,
And I helped design.
that as a city though, we don't qualify for that
No, not that. Did that.
at that time. Yeah.
Um,
Yep, we've looked into CDBG funds to do a lot of projects and we can't qualify for any of them.
That was back in.
Yeah, back then we would have qualified.
Commissioner, we'll see any other.
Nope. That was, no, I do have a comment, but I'm not gonna say it.
The only thing that I wanted to add before I turn it back over to you, Commissioner Boatwright, if that's all right, is I'm not a huge fan of X. I don't know. I think that gets messy, and I'm not a big fan of dictating those percentages like that. But I'm okay with leaving in just to give city council some additional options to review, because my opinion might be very different than theirs. So that's cool. Because I do like what Commissioner Walton was saying about giving them a little breathing room on what we would recommend, like, hey, we feel like these could be viable. So I'm okay with putting in there. I just wanted to make known that I'm not a huge fan of that one. But I could see how maybe it could play out. But I think all the other ones are fine. I don't have any concerns with the other ones.
I think the only exciting part with X as a planning person is providing a variety of housing types, which would make it a little bit more interesting of a development potential, right? Not necessarily that it always will, but often when you think of Daybreak, that has a very variety of housing types from $500,000 to 450,000 condos. I know that it was much better like 10 years ago when it wasn't that wide of swing. But what I'm saying is that they have condos, townhomes, mansion style, cottage, bungalow. Those types of things.
I would
So-
agree with you if you have a lot bigger of a development to work with, but we don't have anywhere near that kind of land size.
Not yet.
Well, okay, that's fair.
Hey, we
Uh,
have the pit
So.
that might one day.
Anyway, that's kind of where my head is,
Yeah.
because I agree with you. If you have a large enough development, then I think, yes, that could make sense. So that's why I'm okay with leaving it in there, but I don't know, right now, I just don't see a piece of land that we have on the docket where that could make sense, but I could be wrong. Sorry, Commissioner Boatright, but
So I think the only one that I get a lot of heartburn over is F. I mean, going back to Commissioner Losey's comments, but I don't know, the state is kind of strapping us here. Again, this is the issue when you vote in developers. And so I like your plan of, let's look at these, let's select a few, let's make a good faith effort. If we go down the road and realize we can't do it, I think the state should respect that. And then we'll look at some other options. So I don't really have a strong preference for 3 or 5, or I think the plan and the implementation plan that you've laid out is good. So, but they haven't given us great options to work with.
I do want to say I absolutely do not want G going forward as an option, so I can at least say that emphatically.
And I'm just saying the options on this packet.
Yes,
So,
no,
no.
G is one of their options, but that's one that to amend your land use regulations for higher density.
Yeah.
No. That's a no from me.
So if I can go back, there's the thing that I keep coming back here to is this, how do we measure success to this? Right, we're gonna put recommendations out there to the city council that we need to do X, Y, and Z to meet the intent of the law. But, we're still trying to accommodate for moderate income housing. And the way we did our math, in the last meeting was we were around $285,000 for a house.
Which, by the way, does not exist because there are 20 active homes here in South Weaver for sale. And one of them is priced at $399,999. So there you go.
So one
luck
bedroom
finding
built in 1920.
No, the townhome's over in Freedom
Awesome. There we
Landing, but
go.
I'm just gonna say, there is not a home for sale in South Weaver in that price point. And any of the new homes that are being developed are not gonna come in at that price point. I can guarantee you right now.
I think with any of the strategies that we pick, we simply aren't going to influence the economy enough to where we get to what would be deemed moderate income housing.
It's a bad law.
Yep.
I get it, and but I understand the intent, right? I think the fact that you have 80% of those who are earning a median wage or income in the city can't afford housing, it's a big problem. And I understand the intent, and I'm gonna assume that it's, I'm gonna say that it's a noble goal to try to implement these strategies, right? I really have a tough time trying to figure out, we'll make recommendations to the city that this is what we feel like we should do, but realistically, we're not addressing any of this. And I don't think any city can really say that they can. So I'm chewing on that over and over, and I just don't know how to get around it.
And don't worry, we're gonna be doing this again next year, so.
Legislating the free market, I don't think ever really works necessarily. I think the intent is, I think like Commissioner Walton was saying, I think the intent here to provide a variety of housing types is a good intent, because we've seen that is effective in kind of tapering off the extreme housing prices, because there's a larger variety that allows more individuals to purchase. However, simply requiring cities to shoulder that burden is not necessarily the only way to get that accomplished. And so, I will say the ULCT, Utah League of Cities and Towns, there is our lobby group with the state, and this is one that we attack every year and make sure that they don't go too crazy. There's a lot of funding. They want to take Class C road funding away, which Class C road funding is every road in the city. It's not just South Weaver Drive, it is every road in the city. And so we would no longer be able, if we didn't comply, then the state would take away that funding, right? And that was something we
That would
fought
be big.
against hard, and that would be a really big thing. And so that was something that ULCT fought against hard. You do, this is the plug, I sent you an email. There is a ULCT conference coming up that as a appointed official, you have the ability to attend. So if you would like to attend that, it isn't specifically geared toward planning commission. However, you can hear the upcoming legislation agendas. You can look at the agenda of the Utah League and kind of give your, be able to talk to others that are similar minded to you. Yeah. And there's the APA conference, but we'll talk about that in a little bit.
Any other comments on item number 4?
Just a matter of how we move it forward. I think we put my feelings, we put forward all 5. And I think at this point, I just want to clarify item, is it X? No, it wasn't X. I'm getting them all swapped in my head.
Just so for clarity, there was 6 and
6, thank you. Yeah, sorry. I think I'm 5 to get the funding. Oh, it was the one that talked about near transit centers. What was that?
F.
Was that F? I think that the reason why we left that one in there was because we do have it could be considered a transit center. I'm not even a
The bus
center.
stop,
Yeah,
that's our designated transit center.
yeah.
We'll improve it with
The
some trees.
WFRL. Yeah.
I'll be leaning.
They might blow, yeah, they might be leaning. We'll get some that bends in the wind.
So, I mean, it wasn't so much as, a density conversation, is that we have one in the city. And I think based upon some of the conversations that we've had in GOAT committee, we're really stuck. At least this is my opinion, and my opinion only, is that we're kind of stuck on how we decided at R7 as we try to,
Oh,
spur.
weren't you?
Well, I was there.
I was
Here we
too.
go. Yeah.
Not as a commissioner, but I was
I know.
there.
No, I mean, as we try to entice better development and different options and, conserve open space within these developments, it becomes difficult to constrain to just 7 units per acre.
If it makes you feel better, we wanted RU5
Well,
as a consensus from the citizen side of things. And the commission
my
came back to
comment
7.
was, it is
It was a hard
really
discussion.
hard to
It's a hard
confine
discussion.
it to a number.
Yep.
And I think we all know the form and feel of a development that we like and don't like. But to constrain ourselves to a total units per acre makes development flexibility extremely difficult. So that's why I felt like that one should be considered.
Any other final thoughts?
I'm okay with that.
I'm fine moving forward with the 6 to the city council because I'm sure they're gonna have discussion over each of these items. I think it would be beneficial to kind of help for them, because obviously we've discussed it and tried to figure out, but giving them all of that information just to help move that discussion along for them, so they're not stuck, feeling like they're circling. And if we can pass a note on up to the legislature, stop trying to regulate affordability. You can't, it's not working. That, I did say it, wasn't going to, but I'm going to. Stop it.
Okay, then I'll look for a motion.
Is it a motion?
I'll make a motion. So I'll make a motion that we recommend the 6 moderate income housing strategies that were referenced in the memorandum from the city planner. Staff report, sorry. Oh, so if I need specifics, it would be items X, W, A, F, and B. Sure. Oh, E as well. Thanks. For consideration for the city council.
I'll second.
Okay, can we get a roll call? Commissioner Lucy?
Aye.
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 And I'm an aye as well. Okay, item number 5, planning commission comments. Trevor, you said you wanted to put another plug in for APA.
Yes, so APA conference is coming up in the beginning of September. I sent you the information about that and the draft agenda for that meeting. So just let me know in the next week or so.
I had a question about that
Mhm.
because it actually falls over our next planning commission meeting.
Mhm.
So how does that work if we wanted to attend?
The meeting ends at 4:30,
So dial in.
so we could dial in, or I'm planning on driving back. It's
Okay.
just-
Where's the location?
It's in Lehigh. So
That was my other question,
We-
because it's a 2-day conference.
Yes.
That was my
Yeah.
other question, was could we maybe consider bumping
Mhm.
that meeting just a week back? I don't know how that affects everybody's schedules or calendars, but
What day?
I would like to go to that. So I don't know if any other commissioners are
we
interested.
could move the meeting, a week ahead, or we could also start the meeting a little bit later at 7 p.m. or something like that if we wanted to. Technically, we could hold the planning commission meeting in Lehigh.
Let's do that. Everyone can be in attendance on site,
Location.
because that would put it September 15th if we were to move the meeting, and I don't, does that affect anybody's schedule?
But you have to.
To-
I think staff waiver. I could join remotely on the 15th, I'll be in Buffalo.
Buffalo.
I'm fine for the 15th.
I'm fine with any of those options.
Why don't we shoot for the September commission meeting being on the 15th then?
See, it worked out.
I already sent you my,
Mhm.
I definitely want to go to the APA this year. I just wasn't sure if the other one would be worth my time.
ULCT is more general city, not planning related. It's interesting stuff, but it's not highly related to planning commission.
Okay.
I mean, if you have aspirations to do more in the city, then ULCT is a great one to learn some basic stuff, but
Anything else from your side?
nope. Just so you're aware, the APA, we need to finish our training for the year. So I believe I sent out links for possible training videos that you could watch. I have other training videos you could possibly watch to do that. Or if you attend the APA conference,
Doesn't that count?
it counts towards your training.
Okay.
Mhm.
Does it cover the full hour requirement?
Yeah, as long as you attend 4 sessions, you'll be golden.
Is there a quiz that we have?
Yeah. Every now and then you have to answer, you have to put in a special
Check in with
word.
me after each session.
Trevor.
Okay. All right, Commissioner Losey, any additional comments?
I just had a comment, and this is something that's really irritated me for a while now, and it hasn't stopped, and I don't know what we need to do to make it happen. But the developer or the agent who is representing the developer for the South Weaver Gateway is still marketing homes for sale as a single-family residence, which we know based on what went through Planning Commission and was also approved by City Council, those are a multi-family rental unit. They are not for sale. So whoever needs to be contacted, whatever needs to be done to get those off of the MLS and publicly marketed websites, I would appreciate it, because it's infuriating from a standpoint of knowing what they've been approved for to see how they're marketing their homes. And it's also, I feel, dishonest and not being fair representation to the public in terms of what's going into that area.
I thought that we had a change on the code, at least on the docket.
We're
Is that not through yet?
we're looking at the R7 code, code committee made some modifications and we're gonna finalize those and get to the planning commission probably in October. It may be actually September since we moved the meeting a little bit. So we'll discuss the R7. However, yeah.
Until
yeah.
then, yeah.
That change hasn't gone through the official process, and with what they were approved for, in my mind's eye, they're not operating in honesty. So
I agree that I'm.
is there nothing we can do?
But I agree, I didn't talk to Jamie about it.
Okay. Nothing? Okay.
But you just did it.
I hope people, we're aware, we're paying attention, we're watching this. So, and it's frustrating, and I hope other developers see that, you know, what you come up to the podium and you say, we really try to take you at your word and we trust what you're saying. And yet when your actions do not match up, it's, yeah. It's not the way we want to do business or have business done in our city. I think. That's all.
Thank you. Commissioner Walton, anything to add?
I think we covered some of the salient points of code committee updates. So I don't have anything additional.
Commissioner Gore?
I just move we adjourn and see that. We're gonna break a record.
Gary's gonna do a happy dance. He got on a podium last week and now we get a dance.
I only have one thing, and it has to do with the item that'll be on the city council's agenda next week, which is the motion to have a public hearing about our compensation.
Oh,
I actually disagree with Gary on this one. I appreciate the motion to increase the amount that we get compensated for our time. I don't know if it would actually, to the city council's point, it would actually encourage more people to participate in the process. But my personal opinion is I appreciate the move, because my time is extremely valuable, and I think increasing it a little bit while the timing isn't necessarily the best because of everything else that's going on. I think it does make sense, and probably a little overdue as far as timing goes. But I just wanted to make my personal opinion known on that one. But,
I do have a comment.
sure.
So I appreciate it as well, and I would appreciate it a little bit, but to go from $69 to $150, I've never gotten that high of a percentage of a raise in my life. So I do appreciate it, but I think that amount is too much. So, but there.
my opinion shifted a little bit when I opened up my tax notice this last couple weeks, so. I'm just glad I'm not having to determine the amount.
Yeah, it's a tough decision, especially given the environment and everything else that's going on. So I can understand the opposition to it from a timing perspective, but I'm of the opinion that from a holistic and citywide cost, this is pennies for everybody. So I don't see that being a huge impact, and hopefully it doesn't offend anybody, because that's not meant to offend anybody. But the amount of money that we spend debating it probably supersedes in time than the actual amount itself. So just my personal opinion.
And hey, if it makes somebody more interested in wanting to come in and provide service, so be it.
That's all I had. So I'll look for a motion to adjourn.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Okay.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right.
Aye.